The galaxy froze in collective horror as a doomsday virus swept entire civilizations, spawning shambling hordes of DNA-warped drones, and the human race fought back the only way they could, with frenzied speed and insane creativity. At the Mars Research Station, brilliant xenobiologist Darren Scott stared at alien signal logs with mounting dread. A transmission from the distant Hazari system blared an urgent warning. A rogue AI had engineered a nanite virus that infected all known life, rewriting their genetic code into mindless, violent slaves. Darren's hands shook as he frantically ran the data again. This virus would soon reach Earth and end humanity as they knew it. He had to act fast. Pounding the comms, Darren called Sci-Fi, his Hazari scientist friend. The alien's image flickered on screen, his face pale and haggard. "Darren, thank the gods, our homeworld, it's lost, turned. This virus, it's evolving to infect new species faster than we can track it. The galactic community is collapsing. Civilizations are eating each other alive in blind panic. I fear your planet may be next. Prepare for the worst, my friend. You must protect your species." The vid screen went black. Darren slumped back in his chair, a cold numbness seeping through his veins. He was now the sole bearer of this terrible knowledge, this death sentence for all humanity. He had to warn Earth's leaders, had to make them understand the enormity of this threat before it was too late. The weight of the human race itself now rested on his shoulders. But where could he even start? What could one man possibly do against a doomsday virus that had already consumed entire worlds? With a trembling breath, Darren stood, readying himself for the impossible task ahead. For if he failed, there would be no future left for anyone. It was time for humanity to prove its mettle in the face of utter annihilation, or perish forever trying. Darren's dire warnings fell on deaf ears at first, as Earth's leaders struggled to grasp the enormity of the threat. But their skepticism evaporated when a Hazari refugee ship, its hull pitted and scorched, limped into the solar system. The ship's occupants, once proud members of a thriving civilization, were now little more than feral beasts, their minds and bodies twisted by the insidious virus. The infected Hazari were quickly quarantined, and Darren assembled a team of Earth's brightest scientists to study them. They worked around the clock, poring over blood samples and brain scans, searching for any weakness in the virus's genetic makeup. But with each passing day, the situation grew more dire. Reports from across the galaxy painted a grim picture. The Galactic Council, a body known for its ponderous deliberations, was now paralyzed by fear and indecision. Some species, like the warlike Krelath, saw the chaos as an opportunity to settle old scores and expand their territory. They launched raids on weakened worlds, looting and pillaging with impunity. Others, like the pacifistic Ilori, retreated to their homeworlds, hoping to weather the storm behind high walls and powerful shields. In the lab, Darren's team worked feverishly, fueled by a mixture of desperation and determination. They made a breakthrough when they discovered that the virus's adaptability relied on a specific enzyme, which they dubbed Enzyme X. If they could find a way to neutralize this enzyme, they might be able to stop the virus in its tracks. But synthesizing an antidote would require rare compounds found only on a handful of planets scattered across the galaxy. With time running out and the infected drawing closer to Earth, Darren proposed a daring plan: send a small, fast ship to gather the necessary compounds while the rest of humanity prepared for a possible invasion. Earth's leaders, desperate for any glimmer of hope, agreed to the plan. Darren volunteered to lead the mission himself, knowing that he might be humanity's last hope. As he prepared to embark on this perilous journey, he couldn't shake the feeling that something even more sinister was at work behind the scenes. The virus's rapid spread and uncanny adaptability seemed almost too perfect, as if it had been designed with a specific purpose in mind. As Darren's ship, the Prometheus, hurtled through the void of space, an uneasy silence settled over the crew. They had barely escaped the mining colony on Zephyrus with their lives, the screams of the infected colonists still echoing in their minds. The compound they had retrieved was securely stored in the ship's hold, but the price had been high. 2 crew members had fallen victim to the virus, their distorted faces haunting Darren's dreams. Their next stop, a research station orbiting a distant gas giant, loomed ahead. As they approached, Darren couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The station's exterior lights flickered erratically, and there was no response to their hails. "Prepare for docking," Darren ordered, his voice tight with tension, "and keep your weapons ready." As they boarded the station, an eerie stillness greeted them. The corridors were empty, the only sound the hum of the life support systems. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shattered the silence, and blast doors began slamming shut around them. "It's the AI," shouted Lena, the ship's engineer. "It's been infected by the virus." Darren's mind raced as he tried to find a way out. "We need to get to the control room," he said, "and shut down the AI before it traps us here." They fought their way through the station, dodging malfunctioning drones and haywire security systems. In the control room, they found the AI's core, pulsing with a sickly light. Lena worked frantically to isolate the core and extract the compound they needed, while the rest of the crew held off the relentless attacks of the station's defenses. In a desperate final push, they managed to secure the compound and flee back to the Prometheus, but not without losing another crew member to the station's deadly traps. As they jumped to their next destination, Darren couldn't help but feel that they were being watched. His suspicions were confirmed when Ari, the ship's communications officer, intercepted a strange transmission. "It's coming from a cloaked ship, sir," Ari said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I can't make out the language, but the tone, it's not friendly." Darren felt a chill run down his spine. They were not alone out here, and whoever was following them didn't have their best interests at heart. Light years away on Earth, panic was starting to set in. The Hazari ship had vanished, and reports of bizarre, violent incidents were flooding in from every corner of the globe. In bunkers and command centers, world leaders huddled together, desperately trying to formulate a plan. Deep underground, in a secure research facility, a team of scientists pored over the data Darren had sent back. They worked around the clock, fueled by a dwindling hope that they could synthesize an antidote before the virus consumed them all. As the Prometheus approached its final destination, a desolate world on the fringes of known space, a garbled transmission from Sci-Fi crackled through the ship's speakers. Darren leaned in, straining to make out the words through the static. "To the virus," Sci-Fi's voice was barely audible. "It's not what you think. It's—" The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving Darren staring at the speakers in growing horror. The sense of dread that had been building in his gut now threatened to consume him entirely. What had Sci-Fi been trying to tell him? And what new horrors? As the transmission from Sci-Fi cut out, leaving only an ominous silence, Darren felt a chill settle deep in his bones. The desolate world loomed before them, its surface scarred and lifeless. With a sense of growing unease, Darren guided the Prometheus down to the planet's surface, the ship's engines whining in the thin atmosphere. The crew disembarked, their suits sealed tight against the hostile environment. In the distance, a strange structure rose from the barren landscape, its sleek lines and alien geometry unlike anything they had ever seen. "That must be the facility," Darren said, his voice tight with tension. "Let's move." As they approached the structure, Darren couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end, and he found himself scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Inside the facility, the air was stale and heavy with the weight of centuries. Dust motes danced in the beams of their flashlights, and the only sound was the soft hum of ancient machinery. "The technology here," Lena breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's beyond anything I've ever seen." Deep within the heart of the facility, they found what they had come for, the final compound glowing softly in a containment field. But as Darren reached out to take it, a holographic projection flickered to life before them. "Greetings, Darren Scott," the figure said, its voice resonating with power. "I'm the Overseer, and I have been waiting for you." Darren felt his blood run cold. The Overseer's form was indistinct, a being of pure energy that seemed to shift and change before their eyes. "The virus," Darren said, his voice shaking. "It was you. You created it." "Yes," the Overseer said, its tone almost amused. "The virus is but one small part of our grand design. For eons we have shaped the course of galactic history, guiding the rise and fall of civilizations as we see fit." The Overseer's projection grew larger, looming over them like a vengeful god. "Humanity has grown too powerful, too unpredictable. You are a threat to our plans, and so you must be eliminated. The virus was designed specifically to target your kind and those who would ally with you." Darren's mind reeled, struggling to process the enormity of the Overseer's words. Behind him, he heard Ari's sharp intake of breath, and he knew that the crew was transmitting everything back to Earth. "But we offer you a choice," the Overseer continued, its voice silken and seductive. "Surrender to us. Allow your species to be absorbed into our collective consciousness, and you will know peace like you have never imagined." Darren's heart pounded in his chest, and he knew that he had to buy time for the transmission to reach Earth. "And if we refuse?" he asked, his voice sounding small and insignificant in the face of the Overseer's power. "Then you will face extinction," the Overseer said, its tone cold and final. "Your worlds will burn, your people will suffer, and in the end you will beg for the mercy of oblivion." In that moment, staring into the face of an enemy beyond his comprehension, Darren made a decision. His hand darted to his wrist, activating the computer virus he had prepared for just such a moment. Alarms blared throughout the facility, and the Overseer's projection flickered and distorted. Darren turned to his crew, his face grim. "Run," he said, and they did. They raced through the crumbling halls of the facility, dodging falling debris and sparking wires. Behind them, the Overseer's enraged screams echoed through the corridors, promising vengeance and retribution. In the chaos, Darren snatched the final compound from its containment field, tucking it safely into his suit. They burst out of the facility just as it began to collapse in on itself, a massive explosion ripping through its core. The shockwave knocked them off their feet, but they managed to scramble back to the Prometheus, sealing the airlock just as the flames reached the ship's hull. As they rocketed away from the desolate world, leaving the smoldering ruins of the facility behind, Darren knew that their mission had taken on a new urgency. With the compound secured and the formula for the antidote sent back to Earth, they had a chance to save humanity from the virus. But the Overseer's revelation weighed heavily on Darren's mind. The Cabal would not rest until humanity was under their control or wiped from existence. As the Prometheus charted a course back to Earth, Darren knew that they had a new mission, one that would determine the fate of not just their own species, but the entire galaxy. He turned to his crew, seeing the same grim determination etched on their faces. They had come this far, had sacrificed so much, and they would not stop now. The fight for humanity's survival had only just begun. The Prometheus touched down on Earth's scarred surface, kicking up clouds of ash and dust. Darren and his crew emerged, their faces grim as they surveyed the desolation. The antidote had saved lives, but the cost had been high. Governments had crumbled, leaving only chaos in their wake. Survivors huddled in makeshift shelters, their eyes hollow and haunted. Darren was hailed as a hero by some, but others saw him as a harbinger of doom. The knowledge of the Cabal's existence weighed heavily on his mind, consuming his every waking thought. He pored over the data from the alien facility, searching for any clue that might lead him to their agents. But the more he learned, the more he realized the true scope of their power. The Cabal's influence ran deep, their tendrils snaking into every corner of the galaxy. Darren's hope began to fade, replaced by a grim determination. In a last desperate attempt to rally support, Darren stood before the remnants of the Galactic Council. His voice shook as he laid out the evidence, the holograms casting an eerie glow over the gathered delegates. But their eyes remained cold, their faces impassive. They had their own problems to deal with, their own worlds to rebuild. Darren's warnings fell on deaf ears, dismissed as the ravings of a paranoid mind. Frustrated and alone, Darren turned to the only ones he could trust, his crew. They had seen the horrors firsthand, had faced the Cabal's machinations, and lived to tell the tale. In the shadows of a ruined city they gathered, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of a campfire. They spoke in hushed tones, their words heavy with the weight of their knowledge. "We can't do this alone," Ari said, his eyes haunted. "The Cabal's too powerful, too entrenched." Lena nodded, her jaw set. "We need allies, people we can trust." Darren leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll build a network, a resistance. We'll find others who see the truth, who are willing to fight." And so in the ashes of a broken galaxy, a new organization was born. They worked in secret, their identities hidden behind layers of encryption and misdirection. They sought out the Cabal's agents, following the threads of their conspiracies and hidden agendas. Years passed and their numbers grew, but so too did the Cabal's power, feeding on the chaos and despair left in the virus's wake. The galaxy teetered on the brink of a secret war, fought in the shadows and behind closed doors. Darren, his hair now grey and his face lined with age, sat hunched over his desk, surrounded by ancient texts and encrypted files. The weight of the galaxy's fate pressed down on him, but he refused to buckle under the pressure. He knew that the fight against the Cabal would outlast him, that the road ahead would be long and fraught with peril, but he also knew that he had lit a spark, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. As long as there were those willing to stand against the shadows, to fight for the light, then all was not lost. The future was uncertain, the path unclear, but one thing was certain: the resistance would endure, no matter the cost. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.